Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty and today's episode is Sketchy Wednesday, where I offer you a free sketch for download on my blog and show you projects I made with it. So here's the sketch, and I actually created this sketch off of this layout, which I do have a process video for already. But I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit of a different take on this sketch as we move into a holiday layout. So these are my daughters, and we are Christmas tree hunting in these photos and then getting the tree home and decorating it. So the first thing I do is go to my supply stash and find my Christmas selection, and I choose 3 papers to be my background, and I cut that tree paper down into a 6-inch and a 6-inch piece, and then I'm trying to decide how I want my background to flow. So I cut the kind of foliage paper down into 5 inches, and then I give myself this darker gold spattered strip to leave an inch to connect these pieces. Now I did cut that at about 2 inches, so I have plenty of overlap. And then I use this grid here to help me get these pieces glued down and back together to be a full 6-inch width. So again, this is going to be a double page layout, and so I am reversing the plan for the other side of the page so that when they meet up in the middle, it flows all the way across. Now I'm going to prep my photos by cutting them down and leaving a little bit of a mat around them, and then I'm separating my photos into groupings. So the photos here on the right are about once we've got home and we're decorating the tree. The photos on the left are about the tree hunt itself and our trip to the tree farm. The sketch had strips going across the different photo blocks and title blocks, so I am going to reincorporate that a little bit. And for my title block here, I'm trying to decide between these 2 alphabets I have in my Christmas stash, and I go with the one that's a little less whimsical because the background papers have a little more elegant vibe to them. So this layout is going to be a tiny bit of mix of a little whimsy with a little elegant, and I like that style. So I'm sorting through all of my embellishment pieces and just choosing out things that I think could work, and I set those aside. And then I move on to creating the blocks that I have in the sketch. So there's a title block, a journaling block, and then kind of an embellishment block. In my original layout, it was a pocket, but for this layout, it is just going to be an embellishment block. I realized that I need to cut these blocks different sizes because the pieces that I'm going to use for my title, this little chipboard frame there, needed a bigger block. So that block is 4x6 and the other blocks are 3x4. And now I'm looking at these branding strips that I had cut off from my pattern paper and trying to decide how I want those to flow across my page. And I like them layered up together, so in the end I'm going to do that, which means I'm only going to have enough for the right-hand side of the page instead of going under my title block also. And then I decided things were blending in a little too much, so a simple tip is to ink edges to help those layers pop a little bit. And then I wanted my photos to pop off the background even more, but I didn't want to cover up all those pretty elements of the background. So a nice thick vellum is a great way to do that. And so I'm going to create these photo mats with this nice thick vellum. And then my focal photo there is going to have a much wider border to it than the rest of the photos will, and that gives it more emphasis. And then with all my little photos, I'm going to create a central photo block. And so this is going to replace, in the sketch, I have 2 4x6 photos. So this photo block will replace one of the 4x6 photos in the sketch. And that is another way to kind of mix up the sketch to help get in more photos if you need to. And then I'm going to go ahead and layer them up. I am placing that main focal photo so that my daughter is standing straight along that vertical strip of pattern paper, which causes the photo to tilt just a little bit. I know that can bother some people, but that slight tilt I actually like. So you can decide what you need to do with your photos if you want some tilt or not. And then I'm trying to decide what should lay on top and what should lay underneath. And I want to make sure that I have some staggered lines as I line up all of these blocks. And so that side is done, and I move on to the right side. And so over here, the photo block, I'm actually going to make in one long row instead of the staggered block that I have in the sketch. And there's a couple reasons for that. So I did set that final photo off to the right a little bit more because that photo is a little bit different than the other photos. So that physical separation gives it a little more emphasis to what's happening in the story. Now my sketch does have small journal spots that highlight each section of photo, so I am going to continue that here, and that's another reason to offset that one photo. Now I am putting together the structure of the layout on this side, and I want to be sure to touch elements together. So these horizontal strips going are going to touch my journal blocks, my embellishment blocks, so that everything feels cohesive when you look at it. And because I have a slight tilt on the right hand side with my photo, I'm going to give that upper embellishment block a very slight tilt. And again, if you want everything to be lined up and square, go ahead and do that. This is just something that I enjoy doing. So that is the start of my embellishment block. Down here with my journaling block, I know I want to add some red here because my title's going to be red, that upper embellishment has red, this lower block needs some red also. But I'm not quite sure where I want that chipboard frame to sit yet and how it's going to flow with my actual journaling text. So I go ahead and set that aside and move on to finishing up my title. I had my letters selected out here, but because that chipboard has a lot of dimension to it, I need to add dimension to my letters. And I have these micro foam dots that I'm going to add to my letters. And even these micro foam dots were a little too big, and I had to cut them down even farther to get them onto these skinny bits of my alphabet. But I managed to get it to work, and while I do most of that off camera, I just wanted you to see how I need to make sure that I get things lined up so that they flow nicely across that chipboard frame that I've set up for myself to be the title block. Okay, so I did the rest of that off screen, my title's done, and now I'm ready for more embellishing. And I pull out a few more pieces that I had set aside and kind of narrow down my embellishments to a few things. And before I move on to that, I know I need to get my little journal spots going on. So I have two different size circle punches that I'm going to use for my spots. On the photo, I'm going to use the smaller circle punch with a green number sticker. And I went through my stash and just found a set of alphabet stickers that had the numbers that I wanted in the colors that I wanted. And then my journal spots down below are going to be bigger, so I have room to write. Now in my sketch, those journal spots were on the left-hand side, but because I filled that space in with a bigger photo block, I've shifted my journal spots to the right-hand side, and that is another reason why I needed to put those photos into a row instead of staggering them, so I had room for that those journal spots to sit down below. And so I add all of my numbers to match up with the coordinating photo number, and I will add just a small bit of journaling to those spots. And I do give them a little bit of a foam pop so that those numbers are more visible on the page. Just giving that little bit of dimension really does help separate things out and make them more noticeable. So if you're having a hard time with things blending in too much, try some foam dots because sometimes that is all you need. Okay, I did add a little bit more embellishment to my title block. I'm adding it's a little calendar chipboard piece into that frame. I thought before I wanted to add a little rub-on piece in there, but none of them were the right size, so I went with that little chipboard piece. And now I'm adding in a little bit of blue to all of the areas because my title has blue in it with that chipboard frame. The leaves in the upper embellishment block have blue. I want to make sure to kind of carry that blue through the rest of the layout also so it doesn't feel isolated. And then as I'm still trying to decide on that red frame for the journal block area, I do need to make sure I get my journal spots in place so that I don't run out of room for those. And then I feel like I've got the right spot for that embellishment next to my journal block. And I add more flowers to that section. And so I've got a tree and two floral pieces to this kind of visual triangle that I'm creating with my various journaling. And here I add a little banner in that blue to carry blue into that block. And then I had some buttons in this that are blue, so that adds some nice texture and helps carry the theme across all of those visual journaling blocks. And then I'm going to add a tiny bit of detail with these rub-ons. So this is "'Twas the night before Christmas" phrase, and so I'm going to follow that phrase around the edges of each of these journaling blocks, and I'm just using these rub-ons with my fingers. They were actually kind of falling apart a little bit, so I did have to kind of manipulate them and be careful with them. But I like the idea of keeping this phrase going from one journal blocks to the next so that your eye can actually read that journaling as you go around. And it's just one more small detail that I think helps your viewer follow the story around. So I finished off that detail on my main journaling block, and then I'm going to add one more element of embellishment, and that's going to help kind of tie everything together. So some of my little embellishments are kind of separated, and while they're touching my journaling blocks, they're a little bit too separated. So I'm going to bring them together with these bows, and I've never worked with these little bows. At first I thought the paper backing was a sticky back, but it turns out that I think it's just a paper to help hold the fabric so that it doesn't ravel. And then I put these bows in place so that it helps the flow between all of those little embellishment pieces. Most of the time it's touching other pieces, or it is very close to other pieces so that it lends the eye a flow between that. So other than getting my journaling down, that does finish off this layout for this time. And I will give you a little bit of a close-up of what I've got going on here. We'll have some photos with the final journaling in place. And that is it for this time. I wanted to let you know that if you missed my video yesterday, I do have a prize going on right now that's open for another day or so, and I will make that prize announcement on Saturday. On Friday, I'll be back with a YouTube hop for the Mixed Media Frenzy group. I hope you will join me for that, and I hope you check out the prize. I'll see you next time.